People who have adult children that don't talk to you. Why do you think that is?
Experience 1. Mom here. My 23-year-old hasn't spoken to me in 4 years. It was completely my fault. I've struggled with addiction, alcohol, and for most of her childhood, I was bad. I hope to be able to apologize to her someday. But I completely understand and respect her decision. Experience 2. From the other parent's perspective. My adult children, 25 and 23, do not communicate with their father at all. Long story short, he remarried about a week after our divorce was final, and he and his new wife went on to have children of their own. Over time, his visits with the children became more infrequent and stressful due to his wife's distaste for me and my children. He has had no contact with the kids in over 3 years, and his previous attempt was 4 years before that. My youngest says he will never forgive his father for replacing us all with a new family and forgetting us. The oldest says it's just not worth chasing someone who has no interest. Personally, I'm sad and angry on their behalf. He divorced me, not them. Edit, I can't reply to everyone, but I want to say, the amount of people who say they've experienced the same issue astounds me and breaks my heart. I just do not understand a parent who can walk away from their child, Ren. Even when it's been hard and I've had to be both mom and dad, I wouldn't trade my kids for anything. Experience 3. There's a woman at church, and every week she asks for prayers during prayer requests. At first, I thought it was kind of cute, but it's over a year later and she always asks for prayers that her children will speak with her again. She claims to have been the best mother, and, one by one, all 3 of her adult children and thus her grandchildren stopped speaking with her. But she did everything right. She fed them, she clothed them, she put them through school. Which to me sounds like the bare minimum that you're supposed to do as a parent, and not everything, but okay. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, but then, every week, another piece of the puzzle would come out. She tried calling, but her numbers were blocked. She tried to find them on social media, but she's blocked. How strange. She says she was such an excellent mother. Why would they block her? She tried reaching out again and received a handwritten letter on why she should never contact them again, but we never heard the contents of the letter. We were just supposed to pity her and have sympathy and assume that these entire separate groups of people were evil and were doing her emotional harm. I got to know her, and she is an abusive narcissist and nothing short of pure evil. All the red flags you'd expect are there. But every week it's praying to Jesus for me, everybody, my evil ungrateful children, blah blah blah. I'd like to hope she is just clueless, but I understand she is sick and probably doesn't know how horrible she really is. I feel very, very bad for her kids, but very happy they were strong enough to break away from that hot mess. It almost brings me physical pain now when she asks for prayers that her kids will talk to her again, because I know all she wants to do is resume hurting them. Experience 4. My stepdaughter is an addict and mentally ill. Her son was placed in our custody by the state 3 years ago at 13 months old, and she has never made the effort to regain custody. Her rights were terminated last year, and we adopted him last month when the state gave us the choice. She has hated us ever since he was placed here and has convinced herself that we stole her child. She only contacted my husband if she wanted money, which he won't give her, so that makes her hate us more. Experience 5. I was very deep in resolving my own trauma when my kids were growing up. I was often distant and emotionally unavailable. I wasn't the parent they deserved. It is the greatest sorrow of my life. I did to my kids what my mom did to me. I can't be sorry enough. Experience 6. My daughter went through a traumatic event when she found out her mom was having an affair with a junkie. The daughter was furious at her mom for destroying the family. Mom flipped out and threatened self-deletion to our daughter's face, blaming her. At that moment, everything shifted, and my daughter became the nurturer to her mom, who regressed into childhood, a complete switching of roles when my daughter really needed a mom. Mom wasn't safe to be angry at, for fear she'd kill herself, so I became the target. We talk, but it's so terse and superficial that it's close to non-communication. I'd like to talk through what happened, even in a therapeutic setting, but my daughter says that's off the table. Experience 7. My mother, who was a psych doctor, started having an affair with an ex-high school friend of mine we bailed out of jail. During the affair, they started drugging Dad's vodka with Ativan to make him pass out. I caught them. I went to the police to report this. They contacted my mother, who was a psych doctor, and the police took me away for evaluation and held me in a psychiatric facility. I was held against my will for delusions and threats of violence. Anyway, they held me until Dad collapsed and broke 7 ribs and tore some ligaments in the fall. I begged the people in the psych ward to make an inquiry with his doctor to do a toxicology report and that he would have unprescribed Ativan in his system. Sure enough, he was drugged. I was right. I got released from the psych ward the next morning. The nurses and doctors were like his story was real. So, I threw Mom and her new boyfriend out. Got Dad sober. Now Mom ran away with her boyfriend, then later found out he beat her to within an inch of life. But Mom has regressed to being a scared child and won't press charges because she's afraid he will come back. Experience 8. Their dad gave an ultimatum: if they wanted to have a relationship with him, they had to go to NC, edit, no contact, with me. My middle child agreed to those terms. Experience 9. My children are low contact. I feel it's fair. Their mother has BPD. She was violent and abusive. She has gotten help, but she still hurts them. I did not protect them. Their not being around me is justified. They should be angry. We screwed up. They didn't do anything wrong, and they need to heal as they see fit. Kids not being around their parents have valid reasons. Most people just can't accept it. Experience 10. My father would say that my mother lied and manipulated us into taking her side during the divorce. The truth is that he boasted to me about pulling a gun on her to teach her a lesson, and then didn't understand why I thought that was unacceptable. I haven't spoken to him in a decade since that discussion. To this day, I believe he was contemplating murder, self-deletion, or family annihilation. Experience 11. I am a parent of a child who does still talk to me, but rarely, and I fully accept that it is my fault. I was an immature parent and made some bad decisions in addition to being inconsistent with my parenting due to immaturity. I am also on the spectrum, but that's something I didn't find out until a few years ago when my son was diagnosed. I know I wasn't great, and I understand my daughter, and I try to give her space. Experience 12. My son hasn't spoken to me in over 10 years. He had behavioral issues as a teen. I took him to doctor after doctor to get him help. He ended up in a partial hospitalization program. He had them fooled for weeks that there was nothing wrong with him, but one day it all came crashing down. After that, he deteriorated quickly in that program. We had come to the point where he was either going to full hospitalization, a boys' school for troubled teens, or he was going to be arrested for assault. His father, whom he only saw maybe twice a year, didn't want that and said he wanted to take custody of him. The program would only let that happen if my son was enrolled in a comparable program with his father. Father said, of course. Didn't happen. My son grew up and was a terror to his father and had little to no contact with me. He got arrested a few times. After one particularly bad fight with his father, he got kicked out. After a few months, my son contacted me on Mother's Day. He told me he was in the Marines, was done with basic training, and was going to be given an assignment soon. I'll never forget how proud I felt of my son then. Shortly after, I was contacted by the Marines, asking if I knew where my son was. He went AWOL the day after Mother's Day. After a few years without contact, he contacted me again. Said he was doing much better and wanted to visit me. I said yes. I should have known when I had to pay for his bus ticket that he wasn't better. He stayed with me for a few days, and I thought all was well. Not so much. 2 days after he left, I got a call from my credit card company. He stole my card and put $1,600 of airsoft pistols on it. I was given the choice to pay it or call it fraud, in which case the credit card company would press charges. I called it fraud. I haven't seen him since. I'm still his friend on Facebook and have seen that he poses as a wounded Iraq vet. That is disgusting and shows me he hasn't changed at all. That's why I don't talk to him. Experience 13. My mother told me, 3 weeks after I lost my father/best friend at 14, that he had told her on his deathbed that adopting me was his greatest mistake. It stuck with me my whole life. I'm 38 now, and know it wasn't true. But that narcissistic witch can rot in hell. Experience 14. I grew up in a retirement community. What I've noticed is that it's due to a few things. The parent is intolerant of their child's life choices. That can be everything from drugs, religion, politics, racist ideology, parents, who their kids married, etc. Sometimes it's the parent's unpleasant personality from either some personality disorder or just plain being a butthole. Some kids usually stay away because they feel they've disappointed their parents and are hiding their life from them. The majority of the issue is usually due to an unpleasant parent. Experience 15. I'm lucky. Both my adult children call me multiple times a week. But my ex, their father, complains that our daughter rarely calls him. I've told him many, many times that if he wanted her to call more often, he needed to listen to her. He's a pretty narcissistic dude who only wants to talk, and if he takes a breath and you try to jump into the conversation, he either gets louder to drown you out or he goes dead silent, clearly in his waiting until you shut up so I can talk mode. He never asks questions or expresses any interest in their lives. My son puts up with it because he can direct some of the conversation by bringing up sports or interesting historical stuff or books or whatever, and then they can have somewhat of a discourse, although listening to the inevitable droning lecture is always included. My daughter has little patience for that, so she rarely calls him. Even after I told him what he should try, he ignored me, which is what he did for nearly the entirety of our marriage. He still periodically bemoans the fact that she doesn't call. Long story short, some kids don't call because their parent isn't listening to them. Experience 16. I know of a distant family cousin whose parents fired him from their very successful family business because he refused to take his wife and children to their church and worship the way they did. In retaliation, he and his wife refused to allow his parents to see the grandchildren. They sued. They lost. They never were able to see their grandchildren and eventually died. He ended up with the business anyway by default, not by the will. They lost decades of grandchildren just by being stubborn. Nobody in the family had anything to do with them for the last 35 years of their lives, and they were miserable. Screw them. Parents, if you screw over your children, don't expect to ever have your grandchildren. Experience 17. I had a patient, she has since passed RIP, who didn't talk to her youngest daughter. We were very close, saw her 3 times a week, so I asked her why she thought her daughter distanced herself from her. She simply said that they were too alike, and they butted heads, even over little things. She did admit that since they distanced themselves from each other, she has had more peace, and she thinks her daughter does too. Not sure if her daughter went to her funeral, although in my head I'm hoping she did. She died from COVID-19. Experience 18. I have 4 kids. My 2 oldest aren't living with me. My oldest daughter talks to me some. My oldest son wishes me dead. I made many mistakes when my kids came back to live with me. Ex-wife lost custody, my eldest hated my LTR girlfriend. My daughter was right. She was terrible and consequently so was I. My daughter left to go back with her mother as she was not doing well here. I understand, now, why. My LTR made my eldest son's life miserable too. During that time, I broke up with the LTR. It was too late. My eldest son left to go be with his mother and sister. I am sure that my ex-wife is not helping this matter, but he is mad at me and I know I made some pretty bad decisions. I have accepted the fact I may never have a relationship with him ever again. Experience 19. Kind of off the main point here. I had a child I gave up for adoption at birth, primarily because I was a single mother with a 4-year-old. I worked. I was always tired. It was the right thing. Fast forward 12 years, and I'm surprised by a knock at the door. It was his adopted parents. And wham, back came all the trauma and pain and confusion, as they felt he would benefit from knowing me. He didn't. I became anxious about the relationship, and he eventually quit coming around. I think I was a disappointment to him, and I'm sorry. He has not stayed in touch, in spite of now distant attempts. I haven't tried in 3 years. He's happier and so am I. Experience 20. Mom of a 23-year-old who went no contact a few years ago. If I'm really honest with myself, after years of reflection, I failed to provide the amounts and types of guidance he needed as he was growing up. I have reasons to explain why I failed to provide enough attention or did the wrong thing, but at the end of the day, the reasons why I failed don't matter a bit from his perspective. Because the result was still that he was hurt as a consequence of my choices. I hope he is healing and self-reflecting himself. I miss him terribly but respect his boundaries. Experience 21. I'm a stepmother, technically, to 2 adult children who went no contact years ago. I see why. I don't blame them at all. They're about to be my ex-stepkids. I genuinely wish them well and I'm sorry they have a crappy dad.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.